Hello, I'm John Adams, editor of Digital Photo. In this video lesson, we're going to have a look at a great way you can split tone your pictures. Now, by split toning, what I mean is you can assign one particular color value to the shadows and the darker parts of an image, and another color value to the highlights and the brighter parts of the image. This gives us this wonderful contrasting color throughout the tonal range of the image. We're going to achieve all this using gradient maps, which sounds very technical, but is actually really easy to use. So before we kick off with that, let's just see how we're going to achieve the result. Well, here's the final result, a nice split tone effect using some deep blues and some nice sort of pale yellow tones for the split toning. But we're going to kick off with our original image, which is a shot of it's the Queen Mary 2 cruise liner, the top deck of that and the guardrail running round. Some nice lead-in lines coming courtesy of these shadows and the nice decking across here, just curling round. But one thing that's lacking in this picture is a decent sky. This is a bit pale and wan and washed out. So what we want to do is add a new sky. And we're going to see how we can do that too. Adding a new sky, we're going to use a blending mode and just take it from another image and drop it into our shot. And we'll see how that's all done very, very shortly. After that, we're going to use our gradient map adjustment layer to create the split toning effect, and then we're going to do some burning to just deepen those shadows and enhance the saturation, and then we'll do some dodging to lighten the highlights and again enhance the saturation in those areas. So that's the plan, that's the project. Let's get started now with our original pictures. We'll close this one down, then we'll go to File, Open, and find our ship JPEG image. Open that one first. And then once that's up on screen, go back to File, Open, and open up the Sky image. Sky JPEG, there it is. Now we've got our two images on screen. Separate them a bit so you can actually see some space between them and so you can see both images separately. Then just pick up the Move tool, and all we're going to do is drag Sky into Ship. So we get hold of the Sky image and we just drag it in and release the mouse when it's there, and there we have it. You can see we've got different size pictures. That's often going to be the case when you're combining two images. And very often you'll only want part of one of the images. In this case, we don't want our photographer here in the shot, we actually just want the sky. So we need to change the size of this sky image. But before we do that, we're going to use our blending mode so we can see what we're doing. Right, now this one's in the document. We're going to close down our sky because we don't need it now. It's just using up RAM on our desktop, so we're going to just use this image here. I'll just boost the size of it on screen so we can see what's going on. There we go. Now we're going to need our layers palette. So pop up to Window and select Layers, and it'll pop up on screen. Here we can see our sky layer, that's layer 1, which we can turn on and off, and then there's our background layer lurking beneath it. What we're going to do is click here where it says Normal and change the blending mode from Normal to Multiply. Just in the second group down, click on Multiply, and it becomes a bit like a slide sandwich. Multiply is the sort of effect you get if you held two ordinary slides together up against a light bulb and you see the combined effect of both of them. So the darker parts get darker still, and the great thing is the detail from this darker sky comes through above the other sky. But of course, the problem with it is it's the wrong size. So let's now resize it so it looks better on our picture. Right, well, let's just shift that layers palette out the way for the time being. Just move it to one side. Make the canvas a bit bigger, we'll just drag that out, and then we're going to hit Ctrl and T on the keyboard to select the transform mode on our top layer. What we're now going to do is hold down the Shift key to keep everything in proportion, and then just drag out this corner handle until we get our photographer off the screen. That's the kind of thing, that should do the trick. Then we can move it around just by dragging the mouse inside, and I think that looks okay there. Yep, our photographer's off the corner, and we've got all sky in the area where we need the sky. Once we've made that transformation, hit Enter or just double click inside the bounding box of the Transform tool on screen, and that transformation will be rendered at high resolution. Now we're going to do some layer masking. This isn't really an option if you're using Element software, so we'll look at that in a short while, but let's look at the layer mask option first and foremost in the full version of Photoshop. We'll just move this back to one side a bit, drag our layers palette back on the screen, let's get that so it's nice and visible. What we're going to do is add a layer mask. This is very, very simple to do. Just click on the Add Layer Mask icon at the foot of the layers palette, click on that, and you'll see a white rectangle thumbnail appear alongside the layer thumbnail. What we're going to do is paint black into this layer mask. So the first thing is to make sure that layer mask is selected. It will be because we've just created it, but click on it anyway just to make doubly sure. If you're on the layer itself, you'll actually paint onto the pixels, but on the layer mask, you'll just paint into the mask. So there'll be a black rectangle around the outside of it when it's selected. We now need to choose black as our foreground color, so a quick way to do this is just to hit D and then X on the keyboard when you're in the layer masking mode. Then pick up a paintbrush, and we need a fairly large brush here. Let's just hit the right hand square brackets key. There, 500 pixels or so should do the trick, 500-600 pixels. And then just check that your opacity is set to 100%. So check this opacity slider here, crank it up all the way to the right, and we're ready to go. What we're now going to do is just paint. And you can see there it works a bit like an eraser. We're just painting into the layer mask, and it's revealing everything that's underneath. So that's working quite nicely. You can see there, if you look at the layer mask, there's this black strip running through it. This is simply where we've painted black into the layer mask. Now once you've got roughly to the horizon, that should do the trick there. We're just going to do a bit of this side here too. Just this part of the hull of the boat. There we go. Now don't go too close to the edge because we need to fine-tune this mask. So that should do me for now. What I'm going to do is now reduce the opacity so we can get a much smoother blend. So we just click on the opacity slider and drag that down to round about 20% or so. That'll do the trick nicely. Now we're just going to gently work along the edge. And what we're doing now in the layer mask is we're painting grey, which gives a result that's less see-through than the black. And we're just going along that edge just to get a nice imperceptible blend where the new sky is falling into place. That's the sort of thing. And that's not a bad job at all. That sky now looks pretty natural, as though it was there all the time. And I think you'll agree that that sky does look a lot stronger than the original bland, dull white sky that was there in the first place. So, there's our good sky. I'm just going to work a little bit along that horizon just to brighten it up a touch. That'll do the trick. Great, so that's our sky blended together. Now, if you're using elements instead of the full version of Photoshop, let's just run through how you can achieve the same kind of effect with that particular software. All I'm going to do is copy this layer, so I'm just going to drag it over the Create a New Layer icon, so we've got another exact copy lying on top of it. I'm now going to switch this one off, and I'm going to delete that layer mask. Like so, so we get back to where we started from. I'm now going to use the eraser. Remember, this is the elements workaround if you don't have layer masks. We just pick up the eraser, we use an opacity of 100%, a nice large brush of 500 or 600 pixels, and we simply rub out that layer. You can see it's giving exactly the same result as the layer mask did. The only thing is we have to be a little bit more careful. So we'll just work up to that horizon like so. Do a bit of work on the hull here. And now, just as we did with the layer mask, we're going to reduce the opacity of the eraser. So we'll just take that down, again to about 20%, using all the same principles we use for the layer mask, and just run along there to give us a very, very similar result to the layer mask option. So that's a simple way of working round. The only thing is, if you go wrong with the eraser, you'll have to either go to your history palette or your undo history in elements, or you'll have to hit Control and Z just to step back. So keep an eye on the work you're doing and be ready to hit Control and Z just to step back if anything goes wrong. But that all looks pretty good, so we'll work on from this point. Okay, now for some excitement, the gradient map. As we said earlier, it sounds very techy, but all we're going to do is click on the adjustment layer icon at the bottom of the layers palette in Photoshop and at the top in Elements, the half black, half white circle, click on that and select gradient map from the list. Unfortunately, it's just off the bottom of the screen. Let me move the layers palette up a bit so you can see it. Gradient map, there it is. Not gradient itself up the top, but gradient map. Click on that and you get this dialog box. And a curious thing happens to the image. It's gone black and white. Now the reason that has happened is because it's defaulted to this particular gradient used here, but it could be any of these depending on what you used last. So if your image looks like that, all you need to do is to click in this box here with the gradient and change it to the black and white option. Click on that and your image will be turned to mono. Now to get our split toning effect, what we're going to do is actually edit our gradient map here. And to edit the gradient map, all you need to do is click in this box. Click on that and you'll see all these options here, the default preset options. But the bit we need is just down here. This bar going from black through to white. This is our gradient that's being used at the moment. And what we're going to do is customize it by adding some color stops. Now this is really simple to do. To add a color stop, you simply click underneath the gradient here. So we're just going to click round about, just under halfway, click about there, and you get a color stop. And that has a big impact on the image, because what it's done is changed the gradient from a black through to white here, and made it much shorter from black to white here. But we're not going to use black. Instead, we're going to use a nice rich blue color. So to generate that nice rich blue color, all you have to do is click in the color box here, and our color picker comes up. Now you can use any color you like, and it is good fun to experiment with different color gradients. We're going to go for a roughly a blue color, and to save time I've actually already logged my RGB values. So if you want to use exactly the same colors as we're using in this video lesson, all you have to do is change red to 61, green to 79, and blue to 111. And that gives us a nice deep blue color. Once you've done that, click OK. And if I move this a little bit to one side, we can see what kind of impact it's having. You can see we've got a nice blue toned result from making that gradient change, because now we're going from black, we've still got black tones in there, black through this rich blue and to white. So we've effectively toned our image one color. Now the interesting thing with gradient maps is you can change the way it looks, because you can actually slide this stop to and fro. If you slide the blue more towards the black end, you'll get more blue in the darker parts of the image. If you slide it the other way, you'll get more blue in the lighter parts of the image. So the image will get progressively darker and darker blue until it blocks out completely and looks rubbish. What we want to do is place this stop roughly at sort of somewhere in the mid-40s. 45% should do the trick. And you can check that with the location box. Or you can simply key in 45% straight into location and it will slot itself right there. So that color's about right for that one. So now we've created this color stop, what we're going to do is get our highlight tone in. Now white is obviously riding at the very top of the scale. Where we have white, white will still exist. But we're going to pull something in round about here, sort of about 3/4 of the way along the gradient. We're going to choose a different color altogether. So click to add another stop there, and then in the color box, click on that to open up the color picker once more. Now this time we're going to go for something that contrasts well with blue, and that's going to be kind of a goldy yellow tone, but we want something fairly pale because we're very high in the register. If you look at the image now, that's not looking good because that color's too dark. So we need to go for a lighter yellow tone, and you can do that by simply clicking on the color picker until it looks right, or you can go for some more precise values. We've already worked it out, of course, and the values we're going to go for are 210 in red, 190 in green, and 153 in blue. They're the ones we've picked, but of course, fill your boots, experiment, try all sorts of different things, because by clicking on the color picker, you get those wonderful instant results, so you can see whether you're going right or going wrong. Once you've set your color, click OK again, and there we have our second stop. And you can see here, here's our split tone. We've got the dark blue colors running to black, then we've got our kind of yellowy pinky color running into white. Now for the location, again you can vary that to wherever you want, but about 75% is right for the color tone we've picked. But you might need to vary that depending on how bright or how dark the color is you've chosen. Right, so with location at 75, what we're going to do is click OK, then click OK to the gradient map, and there we have, all in this one adjustment layer, we've got our split toning effect. So to check your before and after, just click on the eye icon and you can switch it on and off. So we've got an instant black and white split tone effect created, custom created in just one adjustment layer. Fabulous technique. Now this image is almost there, but it could do with a little bit more work just to spice up the contrast within the whole thing. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to open up the layers palette a little bit more, and I'm going to create a new layer at the very top of the stack. So we just click on the create a new layer icon, and we get a blank layer 2 riding above everything else. What I'm going to do is crunch all of this work we've done so far into this single layer. So to do that, hold the Alt key and then click on the flyout arrow and select Merge Visible. Don't release the Alt key yet. Release the mouse first on Merge Visible, and then you can release the Alt key. And what that does, that crunches, it's a bit like flattening an image, but it allows you to keep all this important stuff you've done so far underneath, just in case you need to go back. So we have our entire image collapsed into this new layer 2 at the top of the stack, and this is the one we're going to do some dodging and burning on. So let's grab hold of our burn tool first and foremost. If the dodge tool is visible, just click on it and then select the burn tool, which will be lying underneath. Then we need a pretty large brush, something like sort of 600 pixels or so on this size image. And what we're going to do is set up our shadows first of all. So in range in the options bar, set that to shadows and set the exposure to something like 3 or 4%. You don't need too much on the exposure. Whatever you do, don't allow it to be at 50%, which is the default value. Take it right down to a low value, 3 or 4%, and then you're ready to go. Now all we're going to do is sweep gently across the image and just build up the dark parts gradually. So we're just working into the walkway here in those nice boards, and all we're doing is thickening the shadows slightly. So that's worked pretty effectively. There we go. And we can of course check our progress because we've made this new layer. If we click on the eye icon, you can see that that's gradually darkening the shadows. So we'll work through the image, do a little bit of work in the sky as well, just deepen those nice blue and dark blue tones. And that's probably about right there. I think that's just about enough burning. Let's just check it. You can see there's quite a big difference. It doesn't look like much difference when you're doing it, but when you click on and off on the eye icon, you can actually see quite a big difference, and that's why we've created this separate layer, so we can measure our progress. Once you've done that, we can do some dodging as well, and for the dodging we're going to use the dodge tool. Let's pick that up, and we're going to set range this time to highlights and exposure again to a low value of around 4%. Again, we need a nice big brush, so pick 600-700 pixels or so, and then we can just work into the image, and this time we're actually boosting the highlights. So we're going to bring some of those clouds through. That should do the trick. Let's just bring them through there. And also on this walkway, we need to get a bit more spice into the highlights in this part of the image. It just brings out the detail and the contrast and just adds a lot more bite to the picture. There we go. I want to get the still work in as well. Just get the highlights that are glinting off that. That'll just help out our picture. There we go. Just do a little bit of work at a time, and always you can check your progress. And look how that's progressing. It really is working strongly, that, with the dodging and burning, helping to lift the image a little bit out of the ordinary. Okay, we'll do a little bit of work with the dodge tool here on the hull of the boat as well. That doesn't need too much because we don't want that to bleach out completely. There we go. I think that's enough there. And that's the job done. So if we just quickly backtrack, we've taken our original starting point, which isn't a bad picture, but just had that flat sky. So we added a new sky using a layer mask, or indeed with elements just using the eraser. And once we'd done that, we used that clever gradient map technique just to split tone the image in one fell swoop. And finally, we used dodging and burning just to pep up the contrast and really help it out. So that's a great technique you can try. And one final thing, if you do want to try your gradient map effect, your split toning effect on another image, it's really simple. If you save the PSD or the layered document of this particular image, then you can just open any other image you like. Let's pick a portrait here. There's Kingsley Singleton, the Dep head of DP. All we need to do is make sure we can see both documents on screen. Let's just move that layers palette out the way a little bit. Drag that one in. Click on the live document, the one with the gradient map layer mask in, and all you have to do is click on it and drag it into your new image. You'll see sort of a fist sign come up. When you see that, release, and there you have an instant split toning effect. And that is wonderfully quick. So if you have an image you particularly like the split toning values on, then all you have to do is make sure you've got that gradient map adjustment layer and you can just drag it in. So once you build split toning effects you like, keep them, because they will come in handy for all sorts of other images. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Do have a go at that split toning technique. It really is a great way to lift your pictures out of the ordinary, and it's great fun creating split tone gradient maps. Okay, thanks for listening. See you next time.